I would like to talk to you about sex slavery, in particular, the sex slavery of Islamic State. Islamic State publishes videos and books. The books are really more magazines, and they're found on the web. The title of one of them is Dabiq, and in volume 9 they have a 6-page essay on sex slavery. And the essay is written, or at least the author's name, is a woman's name. Now, the reason that they're talking about sex slavery is that they practice sex slavery. That is, they capture both Christian and Yazidi women, and if they're over the age of 9, they're put on the slave block and sold, for not a lot of money actually, in order to be used for sexual pleasure. Now, what Islamic State does in this magazine is to point out that what they're doing is pure Islam. Now, in America, Obama tells us that Islamic State is neither Islamic nor a state, and yet they are a state and they are pure Islam. Indeed, if you look at what all the different Islamic groups are, the most pure in its Islam is Islamic State. And so they give all the classical arguments for sexual slavery, and they point out that Allah condones it because there are 4 verses in the Quran which mention those whom your right hand possesses, which in this case are female slaves. They also bring up the point that Mohamed had not 1, not 2, but more than 1 sex slave. Indeed, Muhammad's favorite sexual companion was named Mary. She was a Coptic Christian, described as being fair, that is, light-colored skin, and with wavy dark hair. She gave him a son, Ibrahim, which none of Muhammad's other wives out of the harem in Medina ever did. So, they mention that sex slavery is condoned by Allah, and that Muhammad practiced sex slavery, and indeed they go further to point out that nearly all of Muhammad's companions were and had sex slaves. So the idea that sex slavery somehow or another is not Islamic, what Islamic State is saying is, yes it is, it's pure Islam. What are you talking about? As a matter of fact, part of the rant in this article is not about kafirs, but instead how stupid Muslims are for stepping away from the real Islam, and that Islamic State practices the real Islam. Now, by the way, it's interesting to note that the first sex slaves of Muhammad were Jews. Now, one of the reasons that slavery within itself is desirable is that in order to be released from slavery, you need to convert to Islam. And indeed, Islamic State says that some of these women have become pregnant and converted to Islam, and now then they're married off to be good Muslim wives. So therefore, sexual slavery is virtuous because it brings women to Islam and produces more Muslim children. Now, for those Muslims who say that Islamic State is not Islamic, they're wrong. Islamic State gets an A+ on the doctrine. One of the most interesting paragraphs is written by this woman, and I'm going to quote what she says. I and those with me at home prostrated to Allah in gratitude that the first sex slave girl entered our home. Yes, we thanked our Lord for having let us live in the day when we saw the kufr, the unbeliever, humiliated and its banner destroyed. Here we are today, and after centuries reviving prophetic sunnah, which is both the Arab and non-Arab enemies had buried, by Allah we brought back from the edge of the sword, and we did so not through pacifism, negotiations, democracy, or elections. We established it according to the prophetic way, with blood-red swords, not with fingers for voting or tweeting. So take that, critics of Islamic State. Islamic State is pure Islam, and that's what they say. Sex slavery is pure Islam, and so their practice of sexual slavery is pure Islam itself. Study Islam, study Islamic State. Thank you.